In the name of the one who loves the beloved and love itself. Amen. Hi, everyone. I am here in my back garden. It's Wednesday night, and I am getting ready to speak to you. Sunday's coming. It's the last Sunday of Lent before Palm Sunday, before Holy Week starts. And we have this remarkable reading. And it feels like a calm moment. It's calm here in my garden right now. And it's calm in terms of the business of our faith. We are going to go into a very busy period of time, but not just yet. So it's the calm before the storm. Or as Gandalf says, just before the final battle, it's the breath before the plunge. Breath is interesting. In this gospel, Mary pours out nard over Jesus' feet, and we're told that the smell fills the house that they're in. So taking a deep breath before the plunge would fill our lungs with the scent of the nard. And our minds might be filled with shock at Mary's actions. A woman coming in and touching a man in the middle of a social gathering in such an intimate way. And yes, as we breathe in, we might be shocked at that action, but also maybe puzzled. What's she doing? This perfume, what's it for? What are her motives? What's she trying to communicate? Is she sad? Seems like it. Seems like an overwhelming emotion is releasing this action in her. Is she anticipating something? Jesus has been talking about going to Jerusalem and suffering. Has she heard him? Is this one last act of compassion before he goes through a terrible week? She's got so much to be grateful for. He brought her brother back to life, which is interesting, because maybe in the middle of this sorrowful story there's a point of hope. Maybe death isn't the end. And that doesn't mean death isn't real. And Jesus seems to be anticipating the possibility of his death. But Lazarus is there, and he is alive. So in the midst of death, there is hope. And then there are opinions. You know, whenever you try and do something good for somebody, somebody has an opinion about it, and the one that chimes in on this occasion is Judas. This nard could have been sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor. You could have done this differently in church life. You could have undertaken this program in a different way. You could have expended this church money in a better way. And yet then we hear the editorial, the comment from John in parentheses. He didn't really care about the poor. He was embezzling money from the common purse that he kept, and he wanted the money for himself. His motives were mixed. Maybe even that editorial is an opinion on precisely what happened. We know Judas is going to go on and betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Maybe he was in debt. Maybe he was struggling and suffering. Maybe he was so desperate that he was prepared to defraud his friends. But at the end of it all, he realized he was wrong. He changed his mind, though it was too late, and Jesus was already on a pathway to his own death. But Judas turned around and threw the 30 pieces of silver back into the temple court where it came from. So there are always opinions on what it is we want to do. And you know what? The poor, we will always have worse. But Jesus does say that the kind action of Mary should be allowed to stand. He takes us back to the idea of his death. She kept this perfume to embalm me for my burial. Again, he's foreshadowing what's going to happen next. So we have this mixture of personalities and characters in this text. Mary, Martha, her sister, who's cooking. Lazarus, who died and has risen again, and is perhaps a sign of hope in the midst of the text that's all about death. Judas, whose motives are mixed and wants to criticize others for their behavior, but isn't necessarily reflecting on himself. And the editorial of the writer, who is perhaps revealing something that we don't know about Judas, perhaps editorializing. It's a complex text with lots of layers that tell us something about the next 2 weeks. There will be suffering. There will be death. There will be betrayal. There will be lies. There'll be acts of immense kindness. And eventually there'll be hope. All of it is mixed up here in this gospel. And I wonder about you. I wonder if you've tried to do something immensely kind for somebody and been misunderstood. I wonder if you've examined your motives and found them to be wanting in some of the actions you've taken. I wonder if you've criticized others for their behavior and not been prepared to look at your own decision-making with a critical eye, with an open heart. I wonder if you've looked at the death of a friend or your own mortality and seen no hope there. I wonder if you found comfort, even in the midst of suffering, with the fact that life never really ends. It just changes. As we enter into Holy Week, we're invited into a deep sense of self-reflection. It'd be really easy for me to get stuck in an intellectual deconstruction of this text, to ask ourselves whether it really happened like that. Did Mary really wash his feet and dry them with her hair? Did Judas really betray them like that? Was he really an embezzler? Did the editorial from John, was it accurate? Did Lazarus really die and rise again? Was this all really happening? Was this put together as an edit by John, later drawing bits of other stories together into one place? But I think that might drain the story of its power, which is an invitation to each of us to examine ourselves, to get close to our hurts, our hopes, our fears, our grief, to become aware that only by going through some of those feelings can we reconstruct them and see them in a new light. Holy Week is an invitation to be honest about what hurts, to be honest about what doesn't work, to be honest about the decisions we've made that have led us down the wrong path, to be honest about the fact that we are mortal and dying, to be honest about the fact that we have not always used our lives as well as we might. We can try and avoid that process by intellectualizing it, by looking at this text from all kinds of different angles, but really, I need this text to be what it is. A presentation of human frailty, a presentation of human grief, loss, and a presentation of hope. Because these are all the things we're about to enter into. And this week has been a funny week. It started with the Oscars. And I think you all know what happened there. Will Smith was insulted by a joke and went up onto the stage and hit Chris Rock. There have been all kinds of editorials written this week about what happened, what shouldn't have happened, the violence, whether the joke was in bad taste, what should each of the people have done. We could make an argument there about toxic masculinity, about a brutal culture of joking at the expense of others, all sorts of things. But I realized that what I was watching as I was seeing that situation unfold was someone in pain. Someone in pain who was overwhelmed by the moment and didn't know what to do with it and lashed out. And there'll be consequences for that action. But I wonder how many of us are in the same kind of pain right now. After a couple of years of pandemic and lots of uncertainty, lots of staring our mortality in the face, lots of acts of kindness and moments of petty cruelty that we've inflicted on each other and experienced ourselves. Wonder if Will Smith isn't that far away from all of us, or if we're not that far away from snapping and breaking. So, I invite you again, because I think I've invited you to do this before, to be honest with yourselves about how you feel. To be honest with yourselves about what's going on. To acknowledge that you're grieving, in pain, fractured, broken just beneath the surface, losing things, losing friends, losing loved ones, that your motives are mixed, that you've done things that have hurt people, that others have done things that have hurt you, that you have criticized others for mixed motives, that you have received the damaging words of others as damaging in your own heart and let it fester there. That you've really broken some laws, moral or legal or otherwise. I'd like you to be honest about all of that and acknowledge it. And as we take the deep breath before the plunge, smell the perfume. Smell the compassionate act that Mary carried out for Jesus, offensive as it might have been to his early audience. Look up and notice Lazarus sitting there, the one who was dead and is now alive again, and realize that God is with you in all of these feelings and experiences. Will carry you through Holy Week to the day of resurrection, where we will know the fragrance of God's presence and have all the things we need. And we may have been changed by the process. Amen.